Okay, we're all set.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation for June 8th, 2022. So first order of business is privilege of the floor. Is there anybody who wishes to address the Development Corporation or the IDA? Certainly we can receive comments for either.
We had privilege of the floor for the IDA. We can do that at the IDA meeting.
Okay, that's fine. And I believe we might have received some written comments. Is that correct?
Written comments from Todd Kurzweil.
Okay, all right, so we'll get to those. Any additions to the agenda?
Nope.
Seeing none, our first order of business is the Kuga Medical Center bond application. And
Okay.
Heather, do you want to introduce that?
Sure. We've got John Collette, the CFO of Kuga Health System, Kuga Medical Center, on with us today. What you have here is an application to the Development Corporation for a tax-exempt bond for Kuga Medical Center. The Development Corporation was formed specifically to provide access to the tax-exempt bond market, which is essentially low-cost financing for not-for-profit projects. So that's pretty much the sole purpose of the Development Corporation. The Development Corporation does provide access to that tax-exempt bond market. We're just sort of a conduit. We do not provide any credit enhancement. There's no financial risk for the Development Corporation. We're just sort of a pass-through. Our big competitor is the New York Dormitory Authority. We're faster, our fees are lower, and fees actually stay local. Using the New York State Dormitory Authority to do tax-exempt bonds provides funds to the state's general fund. So we do like to see those fees stay local. They support economic development. Just giving a little bit of background, because I know we have some new members on the Development Corporation that haven't seen a bond application come through yet. So we do have this application before us today. What they are proposing is refunding for the purchase of approximately 106,000 square feet that were the former Bon-Ton and Sears stores up at the Ithaca Mall. They will be renovating both facilities to put in and consolidate clinical offices, and then also a health careers training facility. The project does repurpose some, long vacant portions of the mall and will serve to revitalize the mall in general. What we would be looking for today is for you to accept the application, move it to a public hearing. We will schedule a public hearing for bond applications. The county legislature also needs to approve those. So that will go to the Planning, Development, Environmental Quality Committee of the legislature, and then on to the legislature as well.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. And Mr. Collette, would you like to say anything to us? I'll then open it up for questions.
I think Heather summed it up right. We definitely we do have an option of going through you guys or the Dorm Authority, but we want to keep things local. We're a local healthcare system. We want to keep things as local as much as possible. Tompkins Community Bank is involved in this financing. So again, looking for all local options, and what the bond financing's for, just to summarize what Heather said is, the medical center did purchase the Bon-Ton and Sears boxes up at the shops of Ithaca. And the plan is for the Bon-Tons would be the first project. We'd be renovating that and slowly moving our Kuga Medical Associates practices along with the residency program that we have for training doctors into the Bon-Ton space. And then the spare space would be used for educational center. We have a lot of use, including for our residents, for educational, space, but also the potential down the road is to open it up because there is a lot of need for educational space within the community. So again, community theme, trying to do what's best for the community. And lastly, we've seen the blight that closed down malls cause in other communities, and that's something that we're not interested in seeing in our community.
Okay, well, thank you. Looks like we have several hands. Shauna, why don't you go?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, have our attorneys looked this over?
Yes, they have.
I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry, Shauna, what did you ask?
Yeah, I was asking if our attorneys had looked this over.
And Heather?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Shauna, yes, we've had numerous conversations with John, his team, and the bankers, and this is just the first step. We have to go through the tax diligence, but just to be clear for some of the newer board members, that when the LDC issues a tax exempt bond, is a conduit participation. The debt service payable on that bond is solely that responsibility of the borrower, in this case, Kuga Medical Center. So they're still working through the business terms. But John, correct me if I'm wrong, this is somewhat fast tracked. So we wanted to get it before the board and start some of the ministerial acts that have to take place.
Correct. With rates going up, as everybody knows, we'd like to close on this as soon as possible because we don't lock in the rate until we actually close.
It actually does appear that there is an error on page 7 and 8. Line D, there's one extra zero.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my mistake. We could fix that.
Okay, anything else, Shauna?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, John.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. Thank you. So overall, this looks like a great application. Glad to have this in front of us. We don't get a ton of these opportunities, and appreciate your commitment to keeping the funds local. One question I had, I assume you've been familiarized with our diversity and inclusion policy, and it looks like you have actually what I would describe as a very good answer to the strategy for ensuring diversity in hiring. One point, though, is that our policy requires participation in the DCTC, and I'm wondering if CMC already participates in the DCTC, and if you plan to do so as part of this.
Could I just clarify, John, the diversity and inclusion policy is part of the IDA's policies. It's not a policy of the Development Corporation. We do use the same application for both the LDC and the IDA. And so there are, particularly for the bond applications, there are a number of things that just aren't what's the word I'm looking for, applicable. With the IDA, you actually do a payment in lieu of tax agreement. You have the ability to claw back an incentive. We're not actually providing an incentive over a period of time. So, the job creation and all those other kinds of things, there isn't anything for us to recapture or claw back. It's a one-time access to the bond market. So, you might see some things in here that you're used to seeing with an IDA application, but they're just really not applicable here.
I see. So is that also the case with the local labor policy?
Yes.
We might want to consider creating a second application, because this application literally says applicants will be required to comply with the agency's local labor utilization policy, right? Which is not correct. And I mean, my understanding is that these applications become incorporated in the documents by reference.
To the extent that
closing, right?
whatever's applicable will be carried through those bond documents.
Okay.
Right. So I mean, we should probably work on our doc to make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah, it might make sense to do that, John. Okay.
Sorry, may I ask one quick question? Shauna, you said there was a missing zero on page. I want to make sure I get it right. I'm looking at the agenda.
It's
Yeah,
pages
it's page
7 and 8.
and there's one too many zeros.
Within the application?
Yes.
That or the
It's-
comma's in the wrong place. It's either,
I've got it. It's on page 7 of the application, 8 of the the packet, under percentage of project cost finance from public sector, section D, it should be 67,500.
Okay, yeah, John, you and your team that's an easy fix.
Yep.
Okay, Todd.
Thanks, John. I just think, I just like to make comments like John made. I think it's great to see Kuga Medical want to take on that location there, and I think it's going to be great for the community. A good job creator too. I think it's all around. It's going to be great. Just great for the area, and I applaud us using this, the bonding through us instead of the housing fund. I think it's smart. It's like you said, it keeps it local, and I commend you for staying committed to local. Thank you.
Thank you for the.
Yeah, go ahead. John, did you have a comment?
I just thanked for the comment.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, curious about the fees that the Development Corporation charges on a $27 million project, and then what would like the Dormitory Authority charge on something like this?
So we updated our fee policy last year. Our standard fee is 1% of the amount being financed. The Dormitory Authority, their fee is based on the amount being financed, and it escalates the more that's being financed. And then they have an annual admin fee, which we do not charge. So the fees tend to be more through the term of the bond with that annual admin fee.
Great.
Okay, I had a couple questions if I could. One is the educational component. Is that new, or is that just going to be relocated to this space?
We don't really have dedicated space for providing education, so it would be new. There is education going on, but they're just held in conference rooms right now. Really not the best setup, to provide something like that.
Okay. And certainly there's been a lot of effort to build out capability at TC3. Is this going to be coordinated with those efforts, or are they separate?
They're separate, but in the future, we hope to open up the education center to other community members. There's nothing set at this point, but that is our intention, because although we have a need for an education center, at this point, it's not going to be utilized all the time, and we would be able to open it up to outside community members.
Okay, great. And then I was just curious, are you taking fee title to these two properties? And I'm curious how that works in the context of the rest of the mall.
I
don't mean to put you on the spot, but are you buying the property, or is it a long-term lease?
Yeah, it's we've bought both properties.
Okay. And I assume you have some sort of easement or right of access?
The Village of Lansing has allowed the mall owner to subdivide out the big box stores and sell those individually without any lot line adjustments.
Okay.
And
there's
the
also
owners have already done that. Some of the other stores are also owned by individual corporations and not the mall owners themselves.
okay. My old real estate background, you've got landlocked properties, which is interesting how they guarantee access, but I'm sure you've got it all worked out. It just seems very complicated. Good luck.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. And we want to vote to send this to public hearing. So could I get a motion for that?
I'll move it.
Thanks, John. Second?
Second.
Jeff seconds. Any further discussion? I'll call the roll. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Faith,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. All right. Mr. Collette, thank you for coming and talking with us. This sounds really exciting. And good luck moving this
Great.
along. If there's anything else we can do, please come back.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Well, I guess you will be back after we have our public hearing. Anyway,
Yes.
okay.
Thank
Next on the agenda for the Development Corporation is Chair's report. I do not have a report. Staff report comes up next. Heather, do you have anything for the Development Corporation?
I do not.
Okay. We have some minutes from May 11th, 2022. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? Shauna moves. Faith seconds. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes? I'll call the roll. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Sorry, I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't there.
okay. Faith,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, any other business to come before the Development Corporation? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, John. Second, Shauna seconds. All in favor, raise your hand. I'll take, Mike is voting yes as well, so it's unanimous. We are adjourned, and I would like to open the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for June 8th, 2022. So welcome, everybody. And I believe we do have privilege of the floor. We do have speakers. Heather?
Yes, we received on June 6th a comment via email from Todd Kurzweil. This email is intended for distribution to IURA board and TCIDA board as public to be heard submissions at your next public meetings. These are pictures on the first level of the Rothschild building directly east of Sunny Days in the same building. Photos taken last night. And he says no building permits posted in front or rear interior door of that space. This is an active work zone, Uncle Toddy, Ithacan Flea Market. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you each of the photos. Here's one photo. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
It says danger, hard hat, and safety glasses required beyond this point on the door. And then there's a second photo. Didn't like
Might
that.
be able to just scroll up.
I saved them separately because in my email, I couldn't see them.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, let me ask the members, did everybody get a chance to see the email? Has everybody seen these pictures? Yes?
Yeah.
The other one shows an interior door, I believe.
I'm
that has
sorry,
the same-
I'm not able to bring it up at this point.
Yeah, the other picture shows an interior door with the same sign, I think saying hard hat area, but neither picture shows a building permit. And if I could break the fourth wall for a moment and pick on Faith in her other capacity, would it be possible to check and see if a building permit could be put up there?
Yes.
If you get your building department to follow up on that.
I
think
will
that-
absolutely do that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying one more time. There you go. There's a photo with the danger sign again.
But what we really need to see is a building permit, and he's correct. So we should make sure that that's visible. Shauna,
Yeah, I just want to check in for future reference. So would this actually fall within the IDA, or would the enforcement be up to the city of Ithaca?
I believe this is City of Ithaca,
Okay,
but I think he wanted us to be aware.
okay.
And we certainly want to make sure that the project is proceeding as it should. Yeah. Okay. Any other privilege of the floor? Anybody who wishes to address the IDA? Ina, Heather? No? Okay. Let's move on to any additions to the agenda.
No.
All right, and let's move to business. First item is Sunbeam Candles application, and I believe we have a guest from Sunbeam Candles, but Heather, do you want to do an introduction?
We have David Gould, the owner of Sunbeam Candles. I will do a short introduction. Sunbeam Candles is a small, local, organic candle maker. They moved into Tompkins County in 2010, and TCIDA worked with them on a small loan to help with the purchase of a building in the town of Enfield. They have outgrown their building and are purchasing two parcels, one to be subdivided that has two approximately 5,000 square foot buildings that they will be renovating and adding solar panels to move their growing business into the town of, did I say Dryden? I meant to say Danby, the town of Danby. They're staying in Tompkins County. They're a small company, and you can see in the application package, they are an industrial facility. We do at the IDA provide incentives as of right for industrial applicants. Their projected savings on their pilot would be about $14,000 over 7 years. That, together with the sales tax and the mortgage recording tax estimates, their total incentive package is a little bit over $40,000. At the IDA, we do not need to do a public hearing if the incentive delivered is less than $100,000. So what you do have in your packet today is their application, a benefit memo, as well as the proposed incentive, and an authorizing resolution that was drafted by Russ and his team at Harris Beach.
Okay, and welcome, Mr. Gould.
Thanks.
Would you like to say a few words to us?
Well, I appreciate these opportunities, that's for sure. That's the main thing I wanted to say. I don't know if thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your candles.
Sure. Yeah. I started making candles 1993, and when I just got out of college and wanted to do something to support myself as a musician. Had a couple of small businesses of my own over time, and then started Sunbeam Candles in 2004 in a rental in Van Etten with a $28,000 loan and one employee, and have built it up over time. And so it's in our 18th year. We've grown every year, sometimes incrementally most of the time, but during COVID, we've grown a lot. A lot of people have been staying home more and burning candles. We've been grown out of our facility for like 3 years, though. We have shipping containers outside on the sides of the building because we can't fit everything inside. And we had to have 2 shifts during COVID, partly because of COVID safety, but also because of the fact that we just couldn't fit everyone in the parking lot or in the building at the same time in order to do our busy season work during the fourth quarter. So our candles are beeswax candles. We use just domestic beeswax. We get right from the beekeepers all over the United States. And we make everything by hand. We serve about 1,200 stores around the United States. including a few chains. We just got into Whole Foods, Northeast region. So we're starting to work with them in September. And my main core team has been with me for a long time. My office manager has been with me 12 years. My production manager has been with me 11 years. And my shipping manager has been with me coming up on 7 years. So I have a great team to lead the rest of the crew. And, you know, being a green company is at the forefront of Sunbeam's original concept and how we market ourselves. So we use 100% renewable energy to power our shop between solar and wind power. We ship through the carbon neutral program at UPS. We don't use any plastic in our packing materials, and we're always looking for new ways of being greener. We're increasing our solar capacity with this move. And we haven't committed to the exact size of it yet, but it's going to be quite a bit larger than the one we've been using at our current building. And this move is going to afford us to be able to expand a lot. We have a couple of container lines that we've been working on for a while that we haven't been able to release because of the size of our space. So now we're going to be able to release those, and we're going to see a lot of efficiencies gained by having a space that's made for manufacturing instead of retrofitting into the small building we've been in for all these years, which is only 2,300 square feet. So that's a little bit about Sunbeam.
Okay, thank you. And we have some questions. Let's go to Shauna.
Yeah, I don't have a question as much as I have a comment. I just want to let you know that I thoroughly enjoyed reading your application. I found it
thanks.
refreshing. You're doing really good work. The fact that your staff has been with you for so long speaks volumes to your leadership style. And I'm really excited for the fact that you're going to stay in Tompkins County and build upon that.
Thanks.
Yeah, all things good. I am looking forward to supporting this.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, John.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually ask you the same question I just asked Kuga Medical Center.
Sure.
I read your application here, and I didn't see presently participation in the DCTC. I assume you familiarized yourself with our diversity and inclusion policy, which would apply in this case because this is an IDA application.
I am not super familiar with it. I may have read it, but I've been filling out a lot of applications and doing a lot of stuff lately. Do you mind reminding me what that is about?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you're agreeing to participate in the Diversity Consortium of Tompkins County. It's very inexpensive, and it's essentially a collaborative organization that was formed to help folks navigate diversity in hiring and the challenges associated therewith. You know, major participants include like Cornell University, Tompkins County, you know, and other large employers, but there are a number of small employers. You've got to go to, you know, be an active member, which means paying, you know, it's probably gonna be like $70 a year for the size of your company. It's not expensive, but you or a representative has to attend some of their events.
Okay.
And
sure.
you know, they're mostly virtual right now, or have been in the last couple of years. And then you have to commit to, you know, having a hiring plan to meet diversity goals. It sounds like a lot of stuff you're already trying to do. It's just a little bit
we're definitely
more,
always trying
organized.
we're always trying to hire a diverse crew. I mean, right now I think we're at, I forget what it is, 20% or 25 or 30%. One second, I'm just looking in the application right now. I forgot the exact number.
Upon closing, while David's looking for that, we do go over all of the policies and what the compliance paths are.
Excellent.
Anyway, we're always trying to hire diverse. We had a little bit more of a diverse staff like a year ago, and just had a little bit of turnover that changed that. But yep, no problem on that.
And I will also echo Shauna's comments. You know, it's refreshing to see an application like this where there's clearly, you know, a commitment to climate action. You know, it's really nice to see a local business that has grown here, you know, actually benefit from the incentives that we're providing. You know, and you're clearly committed to being a part of this community. So just, you know, thank you for you know, doing the hard work of growing a small business in this town. And remaining committed to that. And I'd like to also just go ahead and move to send this to public hearing, right? That's our next step.
Well, we have to decide whether we need a public hearing.
We don't need a public hearing.
And then we'll put a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Great business. Appreciate you coming to us. I'm curious about I think Heather or you had mentioned about your beeswax supply. So I think you had said you receive it all over the country. Is that just because there's not enough local supply here? Or
Yes.
is there different types of beeswax in different parts of the country that you can make different candles? Just curious.
Not exactly. I mean, the wax in Florida is a lot lighter and smells different than the wax up north, but it's more about where it's available and how much we use. There's not enough in this region, and most of the beeswax being made is in the Midwest and out west, Midwest. A lot of the beekeepers hang out in South Dakota and North Dakota in advance of the almond pollination every year, and then they keep their bees out there, and so a lot of the beeswax is produced in like the Dakotas and Iowa and Minnesota, and so we mostly get it from those 4 states, honestly. So it's not all over the country, but I'm networking constantly with beekeepers all over the country to make sure that we always have beeswax. So
got it,
because we use quite a bit. Yeah.
And I have to admit to going through my mind something about mind your own, but
I didn't make it up.
but I'm sure you hear that all the time. Todd.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what,
everything's frozen. Uh-oh. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything froze for a second. It says my
Okay.
internet connection is unstable. If it goes away, I'll get on my phone and do it. So.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'd like to reiterate what everyone else said. I think it's amazing what you've done with your company. It's great to see a local company, start like this and expand. I'm so glad to hear you're running out of space. That's amazing. That's
Thanks.
great. And I look forward to seeing where you go from here. It's just, it's a perfect example of how this process works. And I applaud you. All the environmental concerns you're taking into effect. I mean, it's like you're doing everything, your retention of your staff. It just, everything that the people said ahead of me, I just got to really applaud you. Just great job.
Thanks. I have to say, it's really nice to get all this positive feedback because as the owner of a company, I don't get a lot of positive.
Yeah.
It's not that I get a lot of negative feedback either, but it's just like it feels good. I didn't expect this on this meeting. I thought I was going to be getting grilled more. So thank you. My heart's like, woo. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I would just echo the same comments made by everybody else. This looks really great. And it does seem like we have a decision point. We can certainly send this to a public hearing, but this is a relatively small project in the context of the different projects that we look at, and it is eligible to proceed without a public hearing. What's the sense of the IDA on this? Do we need to proceed to public hearing?
I would say no. I mean, our public hearings are almost never attended. This project will not be controversial if our policy allows us to proceed. I think we should just proceed personally.
Yeah, and this is Russ, real quick, Rich and John, legally, if the financial assistance is under $100,000, you're not statutorily required to hold that public hearing, which we're accustomed to doing. So you're fine legally to get the final approval and proceed.
Okay, thank you for that. It does seem like the sense of the agency is to proceed to vote on the resolution now. So if somebody wishes to move the motion or the resolution,
Yeah,
John moves, Todd seconds. Any further discussion on the resolution? If not, I'll call the roll. Let's see. And did I see correct that there's an amended resolution that was sent out?
Yes, I did provide an amended resolution.
Okay.
It just changes the actual holding company name.
So that's the
I
one
actually
we're
had a
voting on.
quick question
Okay.
about that before we vote. I assume that's, I mean, basically the holding company is required to bind the lessee, in this case, the actual operating company, to all of our policies. In these cases where it's still a single user, the policies are all the same. It's just passed through in the lease to the operating company.
Yes,
Okay, and that's well documented in our documents, Russ.
it will be.
Yeah, John, that's a good
Okay.
question. It will be, yes. The
Excellent.
fact that there's a holding company, which is not, as you know, unique to this kind of transaction.
Yeah.
But yes, everything will be documented properly.
Okay, and Todd, did you have a question or is that just
no.
residual?
Sorry, I forgot about that. Thank you.
That's okay. All right. I will call the roll as on the resolution. Shauna,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mike,
yes,
Todd,
Yes,
John,
Yes,
Faith,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. Great. I wish you all good luck with your project.
Thank you.
great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right,
All right. Next
until next
item.
time.
Yeah. Okay, next item of business is the BVSHF3 project CHDF payment. And I think we've had extensive discussion on this matter, but if anybody wishes to make any further comment, I'm happy to see that everybody is here today. So we can have a full vote on what's turned out to be a fairly contentious resolution. But so seeing no hands raised to make further comment, I would ask if somebody would put the resolution on the floor. Faith moves. Is there a second? Jeff seconds. All right. Any further discussion or comment? Okay. Hold on 1 second. I will call the roll. Shauna?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mike?
yes,
Todd?
No,
John?
no,
Faith?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So I believe that's 4-3. And we have gotten a full vote on that resolution. Okay, and thank you, everybody, for the patience to work through that. So next item of business is the rural community input discussion. Heather, do you want to open this up?
Do you want to open it up, Rich?
Certainly. I attended a meeting of town supervisors, and with the question of the attention that the IDA is paying to rural communities, to the towns in terms of their economic development. And one of the outcomes of that was to invite a further discussion here among all of the IDA. As you know, we do projects throughout the county. We certainly have done a lot of projects in the city of Ithaca, but that doesn't mean that we're not doing projects elsewhere. I think one of the issues that came up in that discussion was the applications for solar fields out in the rural areas of the towns. And this seems to have been a friction point, certainly in the town of Dryden, but also in the town of Enfield. And I see Stephanie Redmond is with us, and maybe next step would be to give her a chance to just speak with us for a minute. Welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for attending our supervisors meeting. So, I just wanted to give some background information in just the sense that we as a town have felt underrepresented on the IDA long before I was supervisor in the town. It's been sort of a historic issue for our town, particularly when it comes to energy development. And most recently, we had a solar farm installation that when they first came into town, they told us there was going to be a community host agreement and that they were going to, take a lot of consideration to our environment. They weren't going to cut trees down. They were going to, have concerns for our wetland areas. And we felt like we had the wool pulled over our eyes largely. They sort of reneged on their agreement to have a community host agreement. And when they negotiated the pilot agreement with the IDA, they decided that the pilot agreement was too high and they could no longer afford a community host agreement. And then they refused to do that. We asked the IDA to require the community host agreement to be part of that, and the IDA declined to make that as part of the, a requirement as part of the pilot agreement. And then, the IDA did host a public hearing in our town, And we asked the IDA to allow us to use our Zoom hybrid system so that we could have immediate involvement with our residents. And the IDA declined and decided that they should have it, through YouTube, and that residents should have to submit their comments beforehand. And as a small municipality, it's hard to get the information out to residents so that they're informed about what's going on in a timely fashion like that. We had a very short schedule that we were working on. So to get that information out and have them submit comments in time, it was also during COVID, so people did not feel comfortable attending in person. It was during the middle of a work day. Many people are not available during that time. So there were a lot of things going against public input in our town with resident input already, but we felt like there was ways that the IDA could have handled that to get more input from our town members. And then, so there was the community host agreement, and let me just say that I am very environmentally conscious. I built my own house. It's all off grid. I, have sustainably harvested local lumber, and I even have, recycled denim insulation. I'm very conscientious. I do water quality research, and I'm very concerned with the astronomical increases in water temperatures in water bodies throughout the world at this point. And so I definitely am highly concerned with the change to renewable energies. I do think that that's important, and I do want to acknowledge that we do have to deal with the carbon issues, but I also have to acknowledge that solar panels only have about a 25-year lifespan, and there's only a certain amount of carbon offset that solar panels give you due to the mining that goes into the heavy metals, the manufacturing, distribution, all that sort of thing that goes with construction of these sites. So, once a company like Norbit Solar that came in and promised us they wouldn't take out the trees and be considerate of our farmland and whatnot, and they came in and took out hundreds of trees. They clear cut the entire area and had little to no concern. And so that there goes the carbon offset. So overall, we feel like we have a lot of concern that our rural area, lacking the representation on the IDA, will become somewhat of a sacrifice zone for Ithaca when they move toward this sort of Green New Deal. And we understand that even if you put solar panels on every single building and make every single building super efficient in Ithaca, you're still not going to have the amount of renewable energy that you're going to need to meet these Green New Deal requirements. And so we wonder where that's going to come from. And we're concerned that that will come from rural landscapes like ours, and that we won't end up getting, the pilot agreement, the taxes necessary to even, maintain our roads and things like that, because a lot of our land is going to be utilized by these solar farms. And they do become industrial sites for us. They become, kind of an eyesore. And they turned this beautiful field that was circled in this lovely tree hedgerow into, a pretty marred landscape at this point. So, we're concerned that will be the issue. And, with that sort of sacrifice zone in mind, what happens when Seneca Meadows goes down and, Tompkins County doesn't have a landfill, for example? Does that mean that Enfield is going to become a sacrifice zone in that response? And how much, authority do we have to start to control our space here? So I guess we're just looking for more representation on the IDA to have our concerns addressed throughout the county. But in this instant, when we're talking about wind development and solar development, things like that, we would like to see more representation for the town, or more consideration for the town's concerns.
Okay, well, you've certainly lit the fuse. We got lots of hands up. This is great. Mike.
Stephanie, yeah, I want to agree with everything you just said. In Lansing, they just approved the state did, NYSERDA did a solar array that's going to be about 3,000 acres. So obviously a huge concern for us on the other side of the lake. This project you are speaking of was a great concern for everyone. If they have not lived up to their end of the bargain, we certainly want to know that. But it wasn't for lack of oversight, although perhaps we should have left it just to the town. But certainly something we are looking at. I mean, Lansing is going to be hugely impacted by the new law that came out of the states that says everything over a certain plate wattage is going to just be state run. We've lost all kind of local control over that. So I do hear what you're saying, and thank you for coming and saying it, actually.
Okay, Todd.
Yeah, I agree with Mike there, Stephanie. I actually voted against that because I talked to Mr. Lynch afterwards. He asked me why I voted against it. And I said, personally, I think the IDA, and I don't know if something we could do, Russ, with language in the future, but I think we should have something in there saying that we need to have the blessing or approval of the local municipality of where these projects are going. I mean, because you people are the one that live there. You're the one it's gonna interfere with the most. You guys should have say in it, so I'm 100% in agreement with you on that. And if there's a way we can get that into our policies for future, I would love to see that adopted.
Yeah, this is Russ. That is something that has come up, frankly, across the state with the more rural areas that are being impacted by solar and wind. Stephanie, Russ Genzel, nice to meet you. As far as the host benefit agreement, it's a tricky situation getting the IDA involved in that. Because if it's deemed a pilot payment, it has to be shared with the other taxing jurisdictions, the school, the county, the town, versus if the town or the impacted jurisdiction negotiates that impact fee agreement directly, separate and apart from what the IDA is doing. That's how we recommend the towns and municipalities to proceed, because it's a tricky situation. So it's hard for the IDA to have a default scenario within its documents that if they don't pay a host benefit agreement payment that's been negotiated outside of the four corners of our transaction, how we enforce that. So
Russ, is there a way we could make it we could put it in our language where it's a qualification they got to meet? You gotta get the blessing of the local municipality.
Sure, yeah.
We can come to IDA.
Well, we did get the blessing of the local municipality, Todd, but then there was a further request for the host agreement. So it's a little bit more complicated. Okay, Heather.
Thanks, Rich. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background. As the IDA really looked at delivering incentives for solar, there were a number of things in the state that were prohibiting solar from really taking off in New York State. And there was, on solar and on other projects, the IDA has always taken the stance that they do not have any purview over local land use. I hear you on the tree cutting and, some of the things that this developer may have said. That's local land use control. And so the IDA does not have any authority over any of that kind of thing. On industrial projects, on housing projects, on solar projects, they've always taken that stance. The local municipalities have that sole control. Our policy on our commercial solar facilities does actually require that the municipality support the IDA delivering a financial incentive. The IDA has shied away from negotiating financial incentives with municipalities or other taxing jurisdictions. Historically, the only place the IDA has ever done that was with the power plant, because it was so large, such a large amount of the tax base. And it also had there was a real difficulty in assessing a value to it, because you can't compare it to other power plants in the region because there aren't any. When the IDA looked at putting in this policy, they did, based on the research and the information available around the state at the time, set a standard per megawatt payment amount. Other municipalities have asked the IDA to change that payment amount or to change the split between the taxing jurisdictions. And so there is sort of precedent that the IDA has said no. There was one project in the town of Groton, and the town of Groton declined to to send any letter of support for the IDA to deliver any financial incentives, so that project did not move forward. One of the other little pieces of information that I want to provide is what's happened since the IDA adopted the solar policy is that the state has actually fixed sort of an issue that existed in the way that solar facilities are valued and assessed in terms of taxes. They have now fixed the way they have set a standard methodology so that every assessor all over the state will assess them in the same way. I would anticipate that we likely are not going to see any of these small scale commercial solar projects because they're being assessed appropriately at this point.
Okay, Todd.
Russ, this is quite a few, in light of what Stephanie said about them, they didn't keep up their end of the deal on this project, but is there any means we can, help the town of Enfield out with as far as if we could hold back any incentives from them now? I mean, I know it's different than the agreement they had with the IDA, but is there a way we could help leverage something with them?
Yeah, I mean, they're required under our documents to comply with all local laws and town approvals. And if they did not do that, that could trigger an event of default under our documents. So I mean, I'd have to do a little more fact finding to determine exactly, what transpired and what recourse we may have to help the town out. But yes, they're required to comply with all local law. And if the town had a plan in place relative to tree remediation or removal and they violated that, that's something that we could look at.
Okay, is that something we need a motion for, Rich?
So we don't actually. We are talking about zoning at this point because of this project and similar situations. But often Enfield residents want to be sort of the Wild West of Tompkins County until we come up with situations like this and all of a sudden there's a landfill next door. So I've been trying to talk to residents about zoning being the one way that a town board can protect land use issues, but we'll see how that gets. In some towns like Caroline and Danby, it's become quite an uproar and they've had to work through that. So we'll see if we can work through that with our town. We're just starting that process at this point, but there was nothing actually in place legally. I was just bringing up that so that when people in this group understand that while solar projects and renewable energy are really important, there's only a limited carbon offset you're getting. So not all solar projects are beneficial once you start talking about using fossil fuels to clear cut land. So I just, something to keep in mind that, like I said, I'm very environmentally conscious, but you also have to be environmentally conscious of the land use as well. So
I do believe the town of Newfield has site plan review for solar now. You might want to look at what they've done because they didn't have any zoning either.
But it doesn't include any tree cutting issues. So that's something we're talking about now. This was something that somebody should have gone out there with the tape measure and measured how far back the solar arrays were. But when they told us they were going to build them beyond the hedgerow, and then there was just sort of a word, taken. And then they came in and clear cut the entire area. It was unexpected. And a lot of our residents were very upset about it. Yeah. Just to keep in mind. And, as far as the Groton saying that, they did not agree to sign the paper, when I asked, I'm not sure who it was on the IDA about not signing it, they basically said, this is just, perfunctory that we had to sign this either way. And it was going to go forward either way. So I was surprised about that. I mean, I can go back and look through my emails to find that, but I was basically told that, this sort of, letter was not even really needed from the town for this project to go forward.
Yeah. John, if I could just take a turn. Actually, go ahead, John. I'll go after you.
I guess I'm just I hear the concerns you're raising here. And I want to, I guess, just start by validating them. Like I wouldn't want the countryside in my community damaged by these kinds of projects. I'm also just, though, perhaps not entirely certain how the IDA would really meaningfully play a role, because our relationship to these projects really entirely comes down to just like managing the tax relationship between them and the local taxing jurisdictions to provide incentive in order to offset the costs not penciling. And just as Heather said in long form earlier, the decisions about the sort of how and where and what it looks like are generally outside of our purview. So I guess I'm sort of curious if there's a specific ask or set of asks of things that we concretely could do differently or incorporate into our policies or something like that actually really are within our purview. And maybe you can answer now, maybe not. Certainly a letter in the future would help. I think we would be receptive to things that actually fit within our purview and our sort of normal operations that would make these kinds of projects more palatable to local municipalities.
So I think the biggest issue for us was that we really were unhappy with the financial agreement that came out of this. We were unhappy with the numbers, from the pilot agreement being what we considered, incredibly low. And I know that you have a sort of a standard of what they should be, but it's not adequate for the land use. And then being denied this extra community host agreement by the company and having no recourse or authority to be able to require it as a town, it was discouraging. And we were hoping that the IDA would help us in that aspect. The other aspect is we felt very unheard as a municipality. And I know that this has been an issue in our community previously, where they just felt like they had no representation on the IDA, and whether it was the timing of public hearings and things like that were asked for in the past, we just felt that was not addressed. Like I said, I offered to have our Zoom that was a hybrid meeting, so our residents could participate in real time. That was not allowed. It was held during the middle of the day when people are at work. So timing wise, that just doesn't work for our residents. And it would have been nice to have more representation on the IDA as a town, and to have these meetings more available to our residents.
Okay.
I do recall on the public hearing, we have specific requirements for public hearing notification, and there was a request, it was the day of or the day before, that to do via Zoom, and it hadn't been in the public hearing notice. So, there was discussion with council about being able to do that. Maybe in hindsight, we should have rescheduled and done it at another time. Had we known there was going to be controversy or people were unable to submit comments, we certainly would have accommodated that. But it wasn't that we just unilaterally said, no, we can't do it via Zoom. It was that it hadn't been provided via public notice in 7 or 10 days in advance what our notification requirements are. So I am sorry about that.
Yeah, certainly we should be doing everything we can to make sure the public hearings are available to the residents in the area, and we should try to do better. And what you're saying is that the developer made promises they didn't keep, and that's certainly unfortunate. As you've heard, it's sort of outside of our purview to really enforce that. It's more of a town land use control. And in my dim history, I was the town attorney in Lansing when zoning was introduced, and we got it through, but good luck. That's a fight. But, you either have it and you get the protections of it, or, you live as you do now, and you have to take the consequences either way. And I have a broader comment to make about the IDA as a whole. I think we do pay attention to our rural communities. And if you look at the projects that we've done within the county, we've done a lot of projects in our towns, and I think they've been good projects. Certainly the solar panels have drawn far more criticism than others. As I sit here, I'm thinking about what the IDA has been able to do in terms of tax base. We have dramatically improved the county tax base, not just in separate municipalities, but overall. And all of the towns get real tangible benefit from that tax base, that the county is able to provide a wealth of services to all of the towns that the towns could never afford otherwise. And you're not designed to do that. You're rural, but you then have to look at all of the development impacts of all of those projects, for example, in the city of Ithaca. And, at a privilege of the floor today, we had somebody, complaining about one of the projects on the Commons. Their business is next door to the construction. And you have noise issues, you have height issues, you have traffic issues, you have construction vehicle issues, and they're living with it all. And yeah, that's hard. At the same time, that's the trade-off that we all pay for this tax base improvement that we've seen. There are impacts to a solar panel array, out in the country. You do lose some potentially arable farmland. And it does sound like they took down way more trees than they said they were going to do. But, in terms of development impacts, you have to look at it, but you're not really seeing anything other than the panels. You're not having traffic impacts. There's no smells. It's not the worst project you could imagine in your community. This isn't a paper mill. That's not to say I don't understand what you're saying, but some of it is that balancing out of, you trade some of those development impacts for the benefits you get from it. And I'd finish by saying, I was really disappointed several years ago when the Black Oak Wind Farm project went down, that this seemed like a really tangible step our community could have taken to do something pretty important about climate change, and we didn't do it. I would love to see us have some conversation about whether there's a way in Enfield, because you've got the best, highest land to make those development impacts reasonable in some way, that we could actually do something as a community and do something about climate change there. I'll stop talking, and I'm sure you have a response for me, but I'd love to see us work together on something like that.
Well, I mean, the one thing that I would say is at that point, we had no wind law in place. So there was no protection at that place at that point for our residents in that immediate area. If there were a storm and one of those came down, it would have, easily come down on one of the houses around there. It also would have developed one of the few natural areas that we have left, one of the only places that you can see black bears in Tompkins County. And so that's something to consider, is that you are really industrializing a natural area, and people don't want to think about solar panels as industrializing an area. They very much do industrialize an area. Last thing is to consider that project is 10 years old. At this point, it would have been geriatric. It would have been a dinosaur in renewable energy. So renewable energy is advancing so quickly that would have been almost obsolete at this point, while really ruining an entire hillside and one of the few natural areas that we have. So with no protections in place as they were, and seeing the little that the town gets in response financially for it, I have to agree that they were not in a position to really put that in place at that point. I do, like I said, I do support renewable energy, but I don't know that it was at that point would have been done in a way that really would have been beneficial to our community.
Well, you're right. We can't live in the past, but here we are today. If there was a way to really have a conversation about development impacts, I would hope the IDA door would be open, and that the town of Enfield would be stepping through. That would be really great. Anybody else? Todd, you had your hand up. Did you have something?
I was just going to see if the board was interested, you know, and if we pursue it, I have Russ look into, is there a way we can modify our application so people have to get approvals from the local municipalities where the projects are going? Is there a way we could adapt something like that in our policy?
Yeah, go ahead,
I think what
Heather.
Heather said is that
So
they already
our
do.
solar policy does require that. And I do have in my file a letter from the town of Enfield supporting that we deliver a pilot, however, asking that the pilot be a little different than what our standard policy is.
Yeah, because they asked us.
There have been a
they asked
couple
us-
that have asked to essentially renegotiate that policy, that pilot amount, and the IDA has said, no, this is our standard, this is what we're going to do. But for solar projects, there is the requirement that a letter comes, and I do not take that lightly. You know, I went out and met with the town of Groton several times, went to town board meetings, and they decided to say no. They did not send a letter, so a project did not go forward. But we have done solar in the town of Dryden, the town of Newfield, the town of Danby, the town of Enfield, and the town of Lansing. And every time there's been, you know, at least yes, we agree with the IDA delivering some sort of financial incentive.
So I'm all for renewables over that, but when the worst part is you get some of these companies that come in, you can call them fly by nights. They do one project under one name, the LLCs. And then the next project they do, then they as soon as they get the tax subsidies, and so that they sell the project. As soon as it's done, they sell the project to somebody else, and then they create another LLC. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah, the solar projects, that is how they're financed through tax credits, and they do sell them. And they're very upfront about that in the beginning, that they're not going to own it long term. They're going to sell it. That's how they exit.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Stephanie, thank you so much for coming and talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. Next item of business is the chair's report. I do not have a report. Staff report. Heather?
I do not.
All right. We have minutes of May 11th, 2022. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? Shauna moves.
I just
Jeff
have, I'll move them, but Ina, I think you've got to look in page 3 there, right above the TCIDA housing policy. We had a vote. I don't think I voted for that. You have approved 6-0, and I think I voted against that to table that discussion. If you could just check the information. But so I will second it, given that.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Are we ready to vote? I'll call the roll. Todd?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there.
Jeff?
Yep.
Faith?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right. Any other business to come before the IDA? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, and we can adjourn by a show of hands. All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a month.
Thanks,
All right.
Rich.